I ran 144 Trials of the Sekhemas, and this project took me approximately 19 days to complete. I started this project by buying all the high-level Jinbaria for 1 exalt each. This process only took 1 day, since everyone hated the Trial of the Sekhemas and was trying to get rid of their Jin as soon as possible. I also wanted to shout out to Back At Ya for selling multiple Jin at incredibly cheap prices. He hooked me up with 32 Jin for 1 exalt, which actually helped me a lot by reducing the time to purchase the Jin and allowing me to focus on running the trial. Each run takes around 30 to 40 minutes. My character has roughly 91 item rarity stats throughout the trial, and I make sure to pick up every single possible item that my character can carry. I also use the Stormweaver Spark build with Cast on Shock Lightning Conduit to clear this content. This build is very easy to play and helped me handle a lot of the difficult afflictions and modifiers from the trial. I highly recommend checking out Captain Lance 9's video guide if you're interested in the build. There will be a lot of loot that I picked up from the trial, so I will do my best to break it down as simply and briefly as possible to give you the definitive answer of how much loot and currency I farmed from the trial. Now, before we get into the loot, here are some of the best items that I got from the trial. The first one is the Last Flame Relic from my 18th run. I ended up selling it for 150 divines, and then 20 runs later I got another Last Flame Relic and sold it for another 150 divines. By the way, these relics were sold before the divine inflation, so if I had saved these relics until the end, I would have sold them for 300 divines each. Later on, I managed to get a unique Sapphire ring, and no, it's not a dream fragment, but I would love to get a dream fragment from the trial. There are a bunch of other unique items like Widowbow, Crackle Creep, Blistering Bond, Venter's Gamble, Trample Toe, Killjoy, and so on. Besides the unique items, I managed to get a lot of divine orbs from the trial, and I got most of them from the Hourglass trial. Anyway, with that being said, we'll start off with the unique relics that I got from the trial. Out of 144 trials, I managed to farm 91 Peacemaker's Draughts, 85 Burden of Leaderships, 46 Remembered Tales, 18 Changing Seasons, 49 Desperate Alliances, and 2 Last Flame Relics. Unfortunately, the most valuable relics are the Desperate Alliances and Last Flame Relics. The rest of the unique relics are practically worthless. If you check the trade sites, some of these relics have been on the market for days or even weeks. Players are offering as little as 1 exalt, and nobody is showing any interest. For example, someone posted the Peacemaker's Draught for 1 Orb of Alchemy, and it's been up there for 19 days. The Burden of Leadership is even worse. It was listed for 1 exalt a month ago. Season relics seem consistent for some reason, but I doubt anybody is actually buying them. And then we have the Remembered Tales relic. The lowest price tag is a Vol Orb, but unfortunately the unique isn't great either. However, I do have a solution for these uniques. We can dismantle these relics for chance shards and combine them into Orbs of Chance. Orbs of Chance are worth around 3 to 4 exalts each. It's not a perfect solution, but it's better than waiting for someone to buy these unique relics for 1 exalt. I went ahead and dismantled these relics. 91 Peacemaker's Draughts for 9 Orbs of Chance and 1 Chance Shard. 85 Burden of Leaderships for 8 Orbs of Chance and 5 Chance Shards. 46 Remembered Tales for 4 Orbs of Chance and 6 Chance Shards. 18 Changing Seasons for 1 Orb of Chance and 8 Chance Shards. When we combine all these Orbs of Chance and Chance Shards, we'll get 24 Orbs of Chance. We can then convert these 24 Orbs of Chance for 72 exalts on the currency exchange, where the exchange rate is 3 exalts per Orb of Chance. I would have traded these Orbs of Chance for 4 exalts each, but I doubt anyone is willing to pay that much for them. By the way, I'm not converting or liquidating my currencies in this video due to the high inflation right now, which has caused 1 divine orb to be worth around 270 exalts. Even if I convert all the currencies I've manually picked up from trials, it won't be enough to trade for a substantial amount of divines. However, I will provide you with an estimate and the calculation of how many exalts I would have gained through the exchange, and then converting them to divine orbs. Our next item is the Desperate Alliance relic, valued at 3 divines each. We have 2 options for selling these relics. The first option is to list them on the public Path of Exile 2 trade site. This may take some time since we're competing with other players who are selling the relic as well. The second option is to use the Forbidden Trove Discord. Here, we can find buyers willing to purchase these relics for 3 divines each. The Discord is also very useful for finding updated listing prices for specific items. If you're really interested in trading, I highly recommend joining the Forbidden Trove Discord. With that being said, it didn't take long for us to find a buyer for the Alliance relic. It took me a couple of hours to completely sell out all my Alliance relics for 3 divines each. In the end, I managed to pull off 147 divines for 49 relics. You can also earn extra divines by clearing the trial with the Alliance relic. The boss will drop a special item called the Time Lost Diamond. An unidentified version will go for somewhere between 4 to 5 divines each. Unfortunately, my character wasn't strong enough, so I didn't even bother attempting this option. Now that we've covered the relics part, let's talk about how many currencies I manually picked up from the trial with 91 item rarity stats. There are a few items here that I will discuss after I talk about the currencies. These are the divines in the bottom left corner, the timeless jewels, and the grand spectrum jewels. Alright, let's start with the exalts. I managed to pick up 955 exalts throughout 144 runs. If we convert these exalts to divine orbs, it would have cost us at least 270 exalts and above for each divine orb. This also means that we'll get 3 divines after the exchange, which leaves us a leftover of 145 exalts. This also applies to the divine orbs. I managed to pick up 9 divine orbs throughout the run. If we convert these divine orbs to exalts, we'll get around 2,430 exalts in total at a conversion rate of 270 exalts per divine orb. I picked up about 64 orbs of chance throughout the runs, but most of them were converted from chance shards after dismantling all the unique items I acquired. Surprisingly, I managed to collect approximately 340 unique items throughout the entire runs, and kept 44 of them as part of the valuable unique loot. Orbs of chance go for 3 exalts each, so we would get roughly 192 exalts after using the currency exchange. 13 orbs of annulment. We'll get around 234 exalts at an exchange rate of 18 exalts per annulment. We collected approximately 340 Vol orbs, which we exchanged for around 113 exalts at a rate of 1 exalt per 3 Vols. This transaction leaves us with 1 remaining Vol orb. We collected 134 Chaos Orbs, which will yield approximately 670 exalts at an exchange rate of 5 exalts per Chaos Orb. For the 230 Orbs of Alchemy, we will receive around 57 exalts at an exchange rate of 1 exalt per approximately 4 Orbs of Alchemy. This transaction leaves us with 2 leftover Orbs of Alchemy. We gathered 722 Regal Orbs, translating to roughly 61 exalts at an exchange rate of 1 exalt per 20 Regal Orbs. This leaves us with 1 extra Regal Orb. From the 3,027 Orbs of Augmentation, we will obtain 1 exalt at an exchange rate of 1 exalt per 2,000 Orbs of Augmentation. This leaves us with 1,027 Orbs of Augmentation. With 1,688 Orbs of Transmutation, we will gain 2 exalts at an exchange rate of 1 exalt per 800 Orbs of Transmutation. This transaction will leave us with 88 leftover Orbs of Transmutation. Next up are the miscellaneous items. I managed to pick up 127 Lesser Jeweler's Orbs. We'll get around 2 exalts at an exchange ratio of 1 exalt per 60 Orbs, which will leave us with 7 leftover. We have 4 Greater Jeweler's Orbs, which will give us 56 exalts at an exchange ratio of 14 exalts per orb. Interestingly, I managed to pick up at least 3 Perfect Jeweler's Orbs through 144 runs, which will give us 1,365 exalts at an exchange ratio of 455 exalts per orb. For 28 Glassblower's Baubles, we'll get around 6 exalts at an exchange ratio of 1 exalt per 4.5 baubles, leaving us with 1 extra bauble. With 218 Armorer's Scraps, we'll get 109 exalts at an exchange ratio of 1 exalt per 2 scraps. For 135 blacksmith's whetstones, we'll get around 67 exalts at an exchange ratio of 1 exalt per 2 whetstones, leaving us with 1 extra whetstone. We have 60 artificer's orbs, which will give us around 6 exalts at an exchange ratio of 1 exalt per 9 orbs, leaving us with 6 left over. For 31 arcanist's etchers, we'll get around 10 exalts at an exchange ratio of 1 exalt per 3 etchers, leaving us with 1 left over. Finally, we have 54 gem cutter's prisms, which will give us around 54 exalts at an exchange ratio of 1 exalt per prism. Now that we're done with all the currencies in this tab, let's talk about the divine orbs in the bottom left corner. These divine orbs belong to the last flame relic, which I traded for 150 divines each. Unfortunately, I made a huge mistake by selling it early on, thinking that the price would drop or stabilize between 150 and 180 divines. It's best to monitor the market regularly if you're planning to sell the last flame relic. This way, you can avoid making the same mistake that I did. Additionally, remember that divine orbs become the most valuable currency after 1 to 2 months into the league. Next, we have the time lost jewels. These are only obtainable from the time lost jewel chests in the trial. The stats are completely random and they're extremely difficult to sell unless you hit the right specific stats that the player is looking for. I spent a few days trying to determine the price for these jewels, but I've had no luck so far. The price of these jewels can range from a couple of exalts to a couple of divines, depending on the stats. Unfortunately, I don't have a cheat sheet for these jewels, so you might have to figure out which stats you need for your character. Luckily, you can reforge them. A user named GodKingBanana confirmed this by successfully reforging a time-lost jewel. You might also consider selling these jewels in bulk on the Forbidden Trove Discord. It may not be the most profitable option, but it's something to keep in mind if you're struggling to sell any time-lost jewels. Alternatively, you can try your luck by reforging the jewels to achieve the desired stats. Finally, we have the Grand Spectrum jewels. These precious jewels can only be obtained by opening the Gold Spectrum cash chests. Unfortunately, these chests are extremely rare. I've only encountered 4 of them in 144 runs. Each chest grants you a random Spectrum jewel, so you can't choose the one you want. I managed to obtain 2 rubies, 1 emerald, and 1 sapphire Grand Spectrum jewel. The Grand Spectrum ruby is worth around 20 to 30 exalts. The Grand Spectrum emerald is worth around 100 to 200 exalts. The sapphire Grand Spectrum jewel is worth around 10 to 20 divines. Don't worry, these jewels don't take long to sell. I managed to sell the Grand Spectrum ruby for 20 exalts each, the Grand Spectrum emerald for 100 exalts, and the Grand Spectrum sapphire for 10 divines. The next category is normal equipment, which includes rings, amulets, and belts. We picked up quite a lot of normal equipment, but there are only 2 items worth trading, the Stellar Amulet and the Sapphire Ring. The Stellar Amulet goes for quite a lot, roughly between 120 and 140 exalts each. I managed to find a buyer on the Forbidden Trove and ended up trading 8 Stellar Amulets for 4 divines. I also sold 6 Sapphire Rings for 25 exalts each. In my opinion, that's actually pretty good. I received 4 divines and 150 exalts in total for these extra items. In the normal equipment tab, we also have items like the heavy belt, plate belt, and various rings and amulets. These items can be a bit difficult to sell at times and aren't worth much, usually just a couple of exalts for some of them. I also created an Excel sheet to give you an idea of how much they're worth at the moment, but it's best to constantly check the market and Forbidden Trove Discord for the latest prices. The next category includes common jewels such as sapphire, ruby, and emerald. These jewels are quite easy to farm from trials and can typically be found in silver and gold royal cash chests. I've managed to farm over 408 sapphires, 404 rubies, and 443 emeralds throughout the trials. The only complicated part at the end of the runs is identifying and selling the jewels. These jewels are worth anywhere from 1 exalt to 5, 10, or even 100 divines, depending on their stats. Although I'm not a jewel expert, I do spend a significant amount of time analyzing various jewel stats while simultaneously keeping an eye on the market. I've been able to sell a few jewels for a profit, but I've also underpriced myself on occasion. This usually happens when some jewels take several days to sell or don't sell at all. For instance, I sold a magic sapphire with 15% mana regeneration and 10% increased area of effect for 25 exalts, even though these types of jewels generally range from 50 to 100 exalts or even up to a couple of divines on the market. My point is that selling jewels can be either highly profitable or not worth it at all, depending on the jewel stats. This can be a very gray area when it comes to currency making, because some players may get a jewel with extremely good stats that can be sold for a ton of divines, while others end up with jewels with really bad stats and are unable to sell them. With that being said, I didn't really get good jewels through my runs. I ended up selling 288 magic sapphires for 2 divines and trading 99 rare sapphires for 100 exalts. As for the emeralds, I sold 288 magic emeralds for 2 divines and 16 exalts and 188 rare emeralds for 140 exalts. Unfortunately, I couldn't sell any rubies, so I'm still holding on to them until I find a buyer. However, if I sell the rubies for 1 exalt each, I would get 404 exalts in total. You can also test your luck with reforging jewels if you don't want to sell your jewels in bulk. Our next category is the sale of equipment and relics. You might be surprised, but you get a ton of magic relics from the trial. You can actually sell some of these relics for extra currencies. I created an Excel sheet for this, but it ended up becoming a very long list, so it would be better to give you a straightforward answer on which relics you should be selling. These are the stats that I recommend for each relic type. For the Urn Relic, you want to pick up either maximum honor, reduced trap damage, or increased movement speed for the prefix. You want to roll for increased quantity of relics dropped by monsters on the suffix. The Seal Relic is no different from the Urn Relic. It's basically a horizontal version of the Urn Relic. Any relic with the relic quantity modifier between 15 and 17% is worth around a couple of exalts on the market. Additionally, any relic quantity between 18 and 20% will become a bit more expensive, especially a 20% relic quantity. These easily go for a divine or 2, but anything that comes with reducing trap damage, maximum honor, or movement speed is relatively expensive. Keep in mind, the higher the roll, the more expensive it will become. The Amphora and Tapestry relics are the same thing. The Amphora is a 3-block vertical version, while the Tapestry is the horizontal version. Most players usually go for high values of maximum honor and honor resistance. Either of these with 35% or more will give your character 70% maximum honor and resistances, which is more than enough to clear the Trial of Sekhemas early on. Another option is the merchant having additional choices and reduced merchant prices. For some reason, this is a very popular choice since you can buy out everything from the shop before even reaching the first boss or second boss. However, everyone has their own preferences and playstyles. Also, don't worry about picking up the magic vase, coffer, or incense relics. These relics don't offer any good stats. Only unique vase, coffer, and incense relics are the good ones. With that being said, I sold a lot of magic relics throughout the runs, but here are some of the best ones. 5 divine relics for merchant with 3 additional choices and reduced merchant price by 6%. 1 divine relic for merchant with 3 additional choices and reduced merchant price by 7%. 250 exalts for 10% movement speed plus 15% relic quantity. 200 exalts for 20% relic quantity plus 10% maximum life. 100 exalts for 19% relic quantity plus 16% maximum honor. As for the equipment, I sold a lot of rare items for a ton of exalts and divines. Here is the list. Tri-resistance boots with 30% movement speed and a decent energy shield for 5 divines. High energy shield with duo resistances robe for 250 exalts. Plus 5 all minion skills with a decent spirit and mana scepter for 3 divines. I also sold several items for a decent amount of exalts. For example, duo resistance casting ring with high mana and decent item rarity stats for 50 exalts. Tri-resistance mana boots with 30% increased movement speed for 40 exalts, and duo resistance stats mana ring for 25 exalts. Although there were more items I could have traded, I ended up with at least 1,300 exalts and 12 divines. This total also included some of my other trades where I received 1, 2, 5, or 15 exalts, or 1 divine. This portion focuses solely on relics and equipment. However, if we also include the sales of jewels, such as bulk trades and Grand Spectrum jewels, normal equipment like stellar amulets and sapphire rings, dismantling some of the bad unique relics, and any extra relics or equipment trades that took place over the past couple of days while making this video, I managed to acquire roughly 24 orbs of chance, 40 divines, and 3,611 exalts. If we include the last Flame Relic trade and the Desperate Alliance Relic bulk trades, we will have a total of 487 divines. Keep in mind, we still have the currencies that we manually picked up from the Trial of Chaos. But even then, I still have a bunch of items that I need to sell. I went ahead and calculated the remaining items, excluding the unique ones. After all the conversions, I ended up with 528 divines and 9 leftover exalts. It took me between 30 to 45 minutes per run, and I did roughly 144 runs in total. This averages to a total of 90 hours spent farming the Trial of Sekhemas. Also, I estimated the remaining items, assuming they were sold or traded. My math may not be perfect, but the Trial of Sekhemas is definitely worth farming. I also forgot to mention, my relic setup includes stacking as much maximum honor and honor resistance as possible with 2 Tapestry Relics. Then I stack relic quantity stats with a mixture of both urn and seal relics.